Greetings, everybody. Thank you for attending this group, and thank you for Green Tara for holding this event and showing such wonderful support, which is sometimes support for great facts and truth are fleeting on our earth. So can you guys hear me okay?
We can hear you great. Thank you, Uluki.
Okay, thank you. Where to begin? I guess a little bit of history of myself. I come from a tribe which, in the background behind me, and in fact directly behind, is a very special location over in the foothills of the mountains, where our mother and our father gave birth to the spiritual kinship on our earth. And sometimes some people find it hard to understand that it's just like a forest. A forest didn't just happen. There was one seed that grew in the ground, and then that seeded more seeds, and then the forest spread. But the consciousness of humanity has a seed, and that seed was brought into the earth through a process called the dreaming. Some people would call it dream time. And that location where is directly behind us in about a 20-kilometer straight line. And our tribe here is called Warang. And all of the old tribes and languages from around the earth were documented in Latin. So when you read the old tribal terms and language, you have to read it as though you're reading Latin, not English. Now, I was also given certain tools at my birth when I come into this world. And them tools was to assist in the contract that I had apparently signed, which I wasn't aware of until the solar event of 2012. For we all came with a contract to our earth, and we all come with a place, and that place generally can be found within. There's a universe within us, and if we can't find that place within us, what happens is we do a lot of reading and a lot of research, and that becomes a hinder to our own inner journey and inner process. So when I was born onto the earth, I was born with an item called the black pearl. And the black pearl is actually a source of energy and light frequency for the planet. And when it became activated after the solar eclipse of 2012, I had got in trouble for manipulating this specific tool or item. And I was punished for it. And that's okay, because my ego got me in trouble, as to the egos of all people lead them astray. So every day since my punishment, I make sure I get up, and the first battle I have is with my ego. And so I kick the crap out of my ego every opportunity I get. And I struggle to receive praise because I'm so used to the negative forces come on the attack. And I'm quite suited and armored against those kind of negative psychic attacks. But when I receive praise, it penetrates into me, and that actually softens me and it makes me emotional, because I wasn't used to it, and I'm still not used to it. And I don't want to become used to it, because I don't want praise sneaking into my ego. And so that's a battle that I have every day, is to battle with my own ego. And I also battle with all kinds of entities from around this world, and some who are not from this world. But what's occurred on the earth is major trauma and attacks against humanity, which are now, as we see around the world, is ramping up and ramping up. Almost 10 years ago, there was a celestial group that arrived on our earth to give notice to the world militaries and certain church leaders that a future event was happening where someone was arriving on the earth, and the churches and the militaries had to clean up this planet before the arrival. For if the earth wasn't in good shape when this arrival occurred, that no one on earth would be considered safe, particularly if our children of the earth are not safe, nor shall any adult. And that's a little bit of a tough ultimatum. But this planet was gifted to the children of earth, not to corporations, not to governments, not to churches. It's for all the children of the earth. And the children don't have racial structures. There's only one, well, there is no race, really. There's humankind. But the word race implies competition, and over time, if we don't keep our terminology in check, then we'll be constantly, consciously leading ourselves astray with negative terminology. So we're just people. And in this country, a lot of people struggle with the terminology of someone being called a king or acknowledged as a king. And I tell people, you don't have to call me a king. You don't have to call me anything. That terminology will be used against the world governments and the churches who have intentions are not too well for us all. So those terms will be reserved for my meeting with them. And over time, I understand that a lot of people have been researching and reading and checking out online all different teachers and gurus and church philosophies. And as we come up into this time now, 2021, we realize that a lot of that knowledge lacks substance. Now the world requires something with a little bit more substance, soul food in the word. So I've been lucky enough to be gifted knowledge from not only teachers from ancient societies, but also from our creation and our creatorship, as well as now the angelic body. And I know also that here in this country, a lot of the tribes will struggle with me because of talk of our Creator, our Father, and angel talk. But all this is relevant to where we are today on the earth. So what I'll do, I'll introduce all the different titles that was given to me through the spirit world. And because it was not humans that told me I was the king, it was the spirit world. And it was the afterlife. What is no death is only life after the physical. And all around us now are the spirits of all the people who have ever lived and passed through the veil, are all back on our earth to witness and assist in this time of the greatest need is now for our earth. And if we don't rise above our own egos, above our own hatred and ignorance, then the world may be lost forever to us. And that would be very heartbreaking for us all. So the term king comes through the spirit world. And I am also acknowledged as the born initiate and receiver of the rainbow cloak, which is the cloak of black feathers, which comes through the grandfathers of the earth. And not just the black people here, but the grandfathers of the earth as a whole. And so in our original creation, a lot of people will probably need to hear about that there is a mother and a father. And during September last year, mid-September, was when our mother was adorned with a new gown to be made presentable to the universe again, because her gown was ragged and torn purely from what man has done to our planet. And those kind of conscious efforts to harm, because when you harm the mother, you harm us. We are her children. And when you denounce the father, you denounce us, because we are his children too. So our mother, whose name, original name, will become apparent very soon. And it'll be actually her real name. So we're waiting for that to come through. And we will acknowledge her in a singularity as one being, not so much a collective, but as one conscious being who gave birth to humanity with the Father. And that location where the first 13 children of our mother and father were born is directly behind us in that location I mentioned before. As far as genetics go, I'm not a big fan of genealogy or genetics, because comes out of that is an idea of eugenics, which is a negative idea that some races are more superior to others. And that is a conflict that the earth could do without. But my grandfather's people, who are the Raven tribe, married into my grandmother's people, who are the Eagle tribe of Western New South Wales. So in my blood is the union of the Raven and the Eagle people coming together as one. The masculine and the feminine coming together as one. And both of those are divine creations. And I've always told people that I am half man, half woman. How could I not be? I wasn't born out of the one being. I was born out of the union of both man and woman. So essentially we are all man and woman, but even more importantly, we're just children. And children are not to have any sexual labels or gendered labels. But my grandfather's people here in the southeast of Australia, where a lot of the tribes around Australia had different animal dreamings: crocodile dreaming, kangaroo dreaming, emu dreaming, or emu dreaming. But my grandfather's dreaming is the dreaming consciousness itself. We kept the story, or that we kept the reality of our conscious creation in the original dreaming story that created not only the earth, but the consciousness and frequencies of humanity. The 13 crystal skulls that the worlds talk about are actually the 13 original children who were born in that same location that I spoke of before. And through the firstborn, who was a male, and the reason there was a male as a firstborn, because the first humanoid of the earth was a woman, not a man. And that was our mother. She was the first bipedal conscious being that stood on two legs. And she was manifested and created out of rainbow obsidian. And that event occurred after the animal world had become what I call conscious self-conscious, which means that the animal world had to realize its own spirituality as well as physicality and how it ties together. And again, that was in the same location. And then our great father was called by the seven spirits of creation, which people would call the seven rainbow serpents. But the 7 rainbow serpents aren't serpents. They were frequencies, and they are sine waves. And when you draw a rainbow sine wave, it ended up having a head and a tail and becoming a serpent, but they're not really serpents. They're just creator frequencies, which hold the vibrations of our creation, because color and sound create matter. And that's how we are able to exist, through dense matter. That's how all things are able to exist, just because it's dense matter through color and vibration. And so the firstborn of the earth, who actually held the frequencies or the symphony or orchestra of all the future humans of the earth through his presence. And the second-born was a female who had a certain crystal structure that held a vibration that would be the first of the 12, which is the semitones of our creation. There's the rainbow colors, 7, but there's also 5 semitones. It's the same with the structure of music. Now, have we ever wondered why, if you study music, why on the staff of music, which is the 5 bars, they have middle C? Now that is left over from our original creation, because C, middle C, is actually your heart chakra, your heart space, green, which sits in the middle. Yep, 3 above and 3 below. So, pardon me. So there was 7 major tones, red to violet, and then there was 5 semitones, which were the allowable future humans, because our creation knew that there was a time coming when different humans were going to be born onto the earth, and the frequencies needed to be held here to await their, not birth, but await their creation. But otherwise, if we didn't hold the frequencies here ready, none of us would be here. You want that?
You didn't catch it, did you? Oh, I did.
Should we let him go?
Let him go.
Okay. Sorry about that, guys. So, and it's called the cosmic octave, which is the correlation between the 7 notes of music and the 7 colors of the rainbow, plus the 5 semitones. And in the old kinship system, we would never marry 2 colors that didn't mix on the spectrum. So for instance, we would never marry someone who sat on the green part of the spectrum to someone who sits in the red. People who live a highly sexual life are people who vibrate out of the base chakra, or the red. And that's why middle-aged men get a red sports car, and that's why people wear the red lippy and the red dress and the red high heels, because that's their natural vibration coming out of their libido. And people who live with their hearts on their sleeves are vibrating of the heart chakra in green in the spectrum. A lot of the clairvoyants of the world wear purple because they're actually vibrating violet. So at the base chakra, the note that correlates is the note G. And then there's A is orange, B is yellow, C, which is middle C, is green, D is the throat chakra, E is the third eye, and F is the crown chakra. So knowing this, we can actually write music and correlate the relation colors, so we can better emphasize what story we need to tell through music and song. But also, again, like the old kinship system would never ever marry 2 colors that didn't mix on the palette of our creation. And it's important that we make beautiful colors. in the human spectrum, because the exterior color is irrelevant. What matters is the vibrational color, the color and the sound that created us in the first place, which created our conscious spirit, not our 3D vessel. And also, a lot of people know that the original frequency of music was 432, not 440. The Franciscan monks, they actually tweaked it up to 440 to cause disruption in our frequencies. So we need to drop the frequency of music down again. Also, there will be talk of a number that's been mentioned in prophecy, 144,000. Now, 144,000 isn't a literal number of human beings. It's 144 is a frequency. And it's not 144,000, it's just 144. And we believe that that's the frequency of the higher consciousness sitting in your heart. And we need to rise up above our own vibrations to a higher frequency. And creating the advent of the 5D or the fifth dimension or fifth density. But none of us are going to get there until we rise the frequency of the earth up. And she is rising and we're rising like a song and dance. She sings to us and we shall respond. And then she will respond to us. And it's a constant call and response that causes us to raise higher and higher and higher in our frequencies. And people who have darkness or hatred in their minds because they really can't penetrate the heart, the darkness, because the heart belongs to our creation. And the heart is the first organ that is produced during co-creation. And it's funny how they call them organ because we can play music on them. And through those, music is the only music that lives in the heart is love and light. Very hard for darkness to penetrate into the heart because your heart rejects it. But your mind is happy to have it because the mind is programmed by our 3D world around us and programmed by trauma and programmed by ego and want. But I learned on how to get rid of those words want out of my vocabulary. And I've had people ask me, what do you want? I say nothing. But we as a greater humanity have needs that need to be fulfilled. So in order to fulfill the needs of humanity, we must kill the wants of man. Because want is just a selfish need. And I know today that a lot of people are struggling when you look around the world and see the negativity, the darkness, the hatred, division. And all of that comes from places of darkness and ego, which is in the headspace. And I feel so blessed that all of the thoughts I used to have are sunken from my head into my heart. And it feels as though my head has become empty to the point where there's no inhabitants up there anymore, which is great. Because again, once you start to think with your heart, which has more neurons than your actually brain, and in your heart is the genetic and vibrational memory of our creation. And so we can tap into that heart space. And that's why leading up to the events of the 21st of December, we needed to tell the world that there's no external device out there anywhere that can rise your vibration or help you ascend in any way. That the tool to do that is within, and it sits within your heart space. And over the years, the world has become more and more traumatized and more traumatized. And we as people have to learn to forget that trauma, not revisit it. To go back and say do hypnotherapy to go back and see what occurred to us is probably not a good thing. If we know that stuff has happened to us and we need to actually cut that trauma out of our reality by forgetting it. We're not forgetting it, by deleting it. Because the word forget means to obtain future knowledge. For is in front of us and get is to obtain. So we really need to start studying what words actually mean to break the curse, because cursive is the word that's written to lead us away from our own inner creation, in our own beauty and light. And sometimes I try to share my light and love with as many humans as possible. I'll go out into places where there's people who are not vibrating too well. So I'll go into them places and just share love, and it doesn't have to take words even. It can just become just by being there. And you could be talking about motorbikes, but still the frequency of love will be through, actually in the frequency. For the word is just a vehicle. The word is to carry an energy and frequency. So if you believe with love, think with love, act with love, every word you speak will have love intertwined into its frequency. And we also learn on how to drop words like hate. And you, like even the word you, when people said you, is negative talk and segregative, which separates us from the greater consciousness of us all through our own connections. So when the creation began with the 13 crystal beings, the first being was to capture the frequencies of the earth through the animal world and through the celestial world, because our mother is also celestial. You only got to travel to the moon and look back and see that she's a wonderful celestial body. So in essence, it's all celestial. And so the 12th frequency is a symphony, an orchestra made up of different choirs. So there's one choir that vibrated a frequency, another choir that vibrated a certain frequency. And we used to, in the old kinship system, pull someone from this choir to marry someone from this choir, but as long as their song mixed and created a new song of harmony, not a song that was out of tune. And this is what's happened in a lot of the world, where two mishmash songs that come together and caused a disturbance, or basically a disturbance in the force. And so we want to help people understand or develop a way to find our contracts, what our contracts mean to us and what our contracts mean to the creation of our world and a creation of the new world. And coming into this year, 2021, the world will need to know that now we are the authors of the new world. And the author means to authorize as well. And to stand in your power, and the power is love in the heart. And it's the only power people really need to comprehend, not understand. To understand is to stand beneath. So I don't want anyone to understand me or the words I speak, but rather to have an inner comprehension of the frequency that was carried through the word. And I know it takes time for that to occur, because a lot of people begin to process what was said. And processing is an event that happens in the mind. My beautiful and wonderful teacher from the States, who was grandfather of Wallace Black Elk, he taught me that desire is the only true language on the earth, that words are only the vehicles that carry our true desires to and for and about each other. And when I say desire, a lot of people echo and say intention. And I say no. An intention is an impure desire. And it truly is. The pathway to hell is paved with good intentions. And we can see that that's occurred all around the world. But you cannot hide or edit a true desire. And a true desire will show the world who we truly are on every level. Pardon me. And as we move forward through this conscious timeline, I don't like to say that we are running out of time, because that would be me giving an increment to our reality, or a deadline to our reality. And I've also been asked to speak to the world that through our ascension process, again, when the human consciousness calls back to the creation consciousness, which is our mother and father, and there's that call and response song happening again. And to understand also, orchestras and symphonies have a conductor. And because without the conductor, the songs get all out of tune with each other, and the musos don't know where their place is in the greater song of our creation. So there is a conductor, and that conductor was the firstborn of the earth. And I'm just looking up in the sky. We've just been hammered to our west with chemtrails. And so it's a terrible vision. But that's okay, because there's people who are doing that, they're only fulfilling their destiny, fulfilling their contracts. Or maybe they don't really know what their contract is yet and just need to be brought down to earth a little bit to understand who they are and what they are and why they're here on earth. And like I tell people, earth is a misspell. So I take the H off the end and I take it back to the start, and we get heart. So we live on planet heart, not planet earth. And so it's all about frequencies, songs and vibrations, and watching what we speak, and especially what we think. And we really should be thinking from our centers and not from our cranial, because that's easily penetrated. But you can't penetrate the heart with darkness. Only the light lives in there, and the memory of our creation. So it really does all come back to love and acceptance of each other, not tolerance, because tolerance is a double negative. While people think it means to tolerate means to put up with something that I don't necessarily understand or agree with. But if we accept something in its wholeness, and through that acceptance, we'll get the comprehension of it, because we're able to fully look at what it is, why it is, and how it become. And if we don't accept it, we will never ever see that. When we tolerate something, we will never comprehend why we have resistance to it in the first place, to tolerate it. And so it was Grandfather Wallace Black Elk again, who was the Oglala Sioux medicine man. who also taught me the three-step process from desire, acceptance, and action. And so what happens is when we fully desire knowledge, we need to accept all things, light and dark, right and wrong, good and bad, and all the things that sit in between. And through the desire to accept, we come to comprehend, and then we can move our actions and our frictions towards correcting these frequencies around us and these energies around us. I was once attacked by a principal of well, we don't like to say the word Aboriginal anymore, we just say original people. Well, and it's okay to say blackfellas too out here. When I was visiting this school, the principal had bellowed out my name in front of everyone. And it's quite a little interesting story that I shall share. I was sitting down with two alternative-minded young white boys who invited me, because I never get invited by my own people because they don't like me talking so much truth about the corruption I was witnessing. And I become an outcast in the world of our politics and corporations here, which I'm thankful for too. And as this principal of the school, he was a big tubby man with a dark blue suit on, and he calls out my name across the room and bellows out, "Brendan Murray, I've heard many bad things about you," as he approached me, waving his finger. And he said, "But just yesterday I heard something good." And this was in front of children, in front of the ministers for education and artists and families. And he made a public statement about me, which I don't mind. But he was lording over me with his finger like this. And when he said, "Yesterday I heard something good about you," I said, "Yes, how was so-and-so?" And that surprised him, knowing that I knew who said it. And I didn't bother to get up to talk to this man. I sat in my chair, and when I realized his name was Baxter. I said, "Baxter, do you know the difference between right and wrong?" And he adjusted his suit, and instead of answering me, he turned and answered everyone else in the room. And he said, "Right and wrong is purely perception." And then he turned back at me as he adjusted his suit, and in his head said, "Take that." And I said, "No." I said, "Right and wrong is not perception. And this is why. Right and wrong is divided by the ending of a product or a situation that's negative or positive for the greater number of people. If it's negative for the greater number of people, it must be wrong. If it's positive for the greater number of people, it must be right. And if you or no one else in this room can see that dividing line, I said, draw it in the sand for you." And I could hear a rat fart across the paddock. That's how quiet it was in that room. And he actually reversed out of the room, walked backwards. But that's the kind of events that I was quite used to, because ego become attached to so many humans, and ego to me is one entity. It's almost like one spiritual entity that spread its claws into the psyche of humans and become attached like a parasite. And people tell me that ego is healthy, and I don't believe so. And I think that ego has led us to this destruction on the earth and led to our conscious destruction, because we are in a great spiritual war. But now we are in a time of, it's not tribulation, it's not even ascension. What it is now is we need to develop a greater spiritual awareness within ourselves. Once we understand ourselves, we can help, or once we comprehend ourselves, sorry, I'm talking bad of understand. Once we comprehend our own contracts and why we are here on the earth, we can better assist those who need assisting and help people rise up their vibrations and rise up to retune everyone's songs so that we are all singing in unison together. And the song is a song of the heart, which is a three-part harmony, which is made up of the masculine, the feminine, and the inner child, which is the true us. We are not man or woman, we are children of the earth. Man and woman was created to create children. And so there's coming a time very soon where there's going to be also a few major announcements given to our world. And a lot of people have asked me how they could help me, and all I ask is for people to accept the knowledge and not to judge the knowledge that's been gifted to our world. And not to see me as a guru or not to see me as anything really, but just a messenger, that's all. I just carry a message, and that message is love, acceptance, spiritual nobility, composure, compassion, and these facets or aspects of ourselves, once we develop them more, we'll actually become more intelligent in this area, which is a bit of a pyramid shape, but to assist ourselves. And again, when we rise, people around us rise. When they rise, we'll rise again. And it's just stepping up and not stepping on each other to rise, but stepping up and then helping each other up as we rise. Because one secret to our full ascension is that no one will be left behind. And because we cannot ascend the earth into a different reality without us all coming. So it almost sounds impossible. But again, the word impossible is a trick. And I break it down to I'm possible. Not impossible, but I'm possible. And if every conscious human can tell themselves, I am possible, I'm possible, and not to let anyone tell you otherwise on the earth. Because when people tell you that things are impossible or it's too big, and that's them giving up on each other. And want you to give up too, because people like to drag each other down into a lower vibration, so they're not alone in their misery. And I know some people will struggle with their own misery, but as time goes on and the frequencies keep rising, they will come out of that self-imposed misery. Although misery was placed upon us by the previous generation, trauma was handed down like it was an heirloom. But they're heirloom that the humanity no longer require or need. Last year, I was visited by certain angels of our creation, and they were the angels of sorrow. And I found myself surrounded by all the sorrow that's ever occurred on the earth. And I've never felt that before. To the points where I collapsed on the ground and I could hardly stand up, and I was sobbing and crying. And then I asked, well, why did you do this to me? Why did you bring the sorrow to me? And they said, we just want to remind you of what the world could use less of and why your message now needs to be spoken to the world, so that we can start to cut off the dead wood of the tree of life, which is trauma, hatred, resentment, all these things that we can do about on our beautiful mother. But also, when we speak of our beautiful mother, we must also acknowledge her husband, who is our beautiful celestial creator, the greater consciousness of the universe that allowed all this to begin in the first ideas of the universal creation. And in mid-September last year was when our mother was adorned with a new gown, as I spoke of before, and started to sing her song out to the universe. And that's when the frequencies really started to lift up on the earth. And out here in the valley, all around us, we were watching marbled rainbow colours rising out of the ground, going upwards, not coming down. Because the ascension process isn't always about out there, sometimes it's about in here. So our mother's heart was vibrating at a higher level. And someone told me that the Schumann resonance at that time was starting to spike and peak. But she wasn't singing to us. We just happened to be hearing her song. She was singing to her husband in the stars, who was coming to reunite himself with his wife, his beautiful wife, who was our mother. And who are we as people or humans to stand in the way of such love from our conscious mother to our conscious father? We need to acknowledge both, not one or the other. And through that acknowledgement of our mother and father, again, that will bring the family closer together. And that will bring our vibrations into a state of correction on our earth. Before I go much, what is the time frame?
Well, we've been on for about 45 minutes, so you open up question time?
Uluki, it's Addie here. I would say let's do a little bit more of your sharing. I think it's flowing so beautifully and people are really appreciating it. I'm monitoring the chat, and I think that we can continue this way, and then we will do Q&A a little later.
Okay. Jeez. Now you're putting me on the spot. So some of the conversations I've been having with some people lately, and pardon me, and one thing I have noticed over the past 4 to 5 months, or less time actually, is that I've been contacted by a lot of females more than males, and I'm trying to invite more males to rise to the occasion now and not feel fear of judgment from their peers about having to speak from the heart and speak of spiritual nature. And I can't read that. I need specs. And that's like later on today, I'll be meeting with a group of people, again, mainly women, but there's some men turning up this time, and some really rugged men. So I look forward to receiving these people and having the energies and frequencies balanced out a little bit. And the reason why the feminine side has been tuning in a little bit more is because of the mother's song, which is feminine. And when she sung and began to sing in September, it was the feminine of nature was hearing it more than the masculine in nature. So we are waiting for signs that will help tie our universal frequencies of the masculine and feminine to become one sine wave again instead of two sine waves. Because that's why I said before that when people looked at me funny when I said I am half man, half woman, how could I not be? And therefore, I can be neither or both. And through this time frame as well, the three concepts that controlled the earth was sex, money, power. And those three tools of power are losing their power over the consciousness of people. And those things will have a place, but they will not be the reason for tyranny or the reason for trauma. But rather, they'll just become basic needs of a lower level. And the world shall be governed in the future and authored by love and acceptance of our own realities and our own love for each other. And we're coming up, there's certain timelines that's happening. And in fact, just beneath us here, and this is the reason why I wanted to bring you all here today, pardon me, was an underground base that was shared by the reptilian and Anunnaki forces. In January of 2017, that this place here, right where we sit, was under a heavy attack from a golden orb that was sitting above here. And I was watching from down in the valley here, where I lived in a tent in a caravan on an old closed road. And I've been living with a homeless family in this area for the last 5 years, and only in the 12 months has that family been able to move into a house. And I actually live up the back of the property in a tent, which I really enjoy. I like nature to dictate when I wake up and go to sleep. And it's wonderful to be waken up sometimes a bit early by the birds. And what I noticed with the birds is they actually all wake up at the same time, and they all have this chirp and they say good hello to each other. And that's every bird in the area. And then for a couple of minutes, they'll all say hello, and then there will be quiet silence. And then one species of bird will have their song for a few minutes, and then that song will quiet down, and then another species of bird will sing their song, and they all taking turns on singing their songs. But at first, they all say hello to each other. And in our old dreaming stories, they say it was the birds who taught us to speak when we first become humans on the earth. And we didn't evolve in the way that science would tell us. We were born as we are. And the animal world had so much to teach us. They taught us laws, they taught us kinship laws, they taught us song and dance and language. And also, a lot of the animals of the world actually come from other places in the universe. For when our Earth, our mother, was first developed and created, that it's like when I go to visit a home for the first time, I like to take a gift, and I'll give that to the woman of the house, and this is the gift for your house. And it's like what happened here when different beings would come here for the first time after the seed penetrated the egg, and the seed was Uluru. And that penetrated and brought biology and frequency, which are the 9 serpents That's 7 rainbow serpents. And the other 2 serpents, well, not serpents, frequencies, I should say. Again, my apologies. And those frequencies are the 7 rainbow frequencies or spectral frequencies. And the other 2 frequencies was, one frequency was pure black and dark. And the other frequency was pure light. Well, the rainbow can only live and exist between the shadows of light and dark. And that the dark frequency is an energy that lives deep within our earth and is known to our creation as the destroyer. And the light frequency is purity, because nothing can penetrate into the white light. It rejects all frequencies and all energies and remains true to itself. Much as the light in your heart. Once you can penetrate your heart space and let that light come out. Because broken hearts are not to let the light in, they are let the light out. And so once that light shines out of your heart, the darker frequencies, they hate it. Because you can bring one candle into a dark room and light the room. But you can't bring a shadow into the light because it becomes non-existent. And I also tell people, don't seek the light. Don't stand in front of it, but rather be it. And the moment you be the light within your own heart, a shadow becomes very small. And the only shadow you have is beneath your feet on the earth, if there's even a shadow there to be had. But if you stand in front of the light, you still have a shadow to your back. If you seek the light, then again, you're still carrying a shadow. And that shadow is what we need to now cut. Because in that shadow is our trauma, our childhood trauma, our past life traumas that is a hinder and an anchor to our ascension process, pardon me. And so that shadow, in the shadow is also ego, wants, resentments, who are they're gangsters, really. Those are emotional gangsters that live in our shadow, behind us. And those emotional gangsters, like I said, resentment, hate, want, feed on our trauma. So take the food away from them. Your computer's making noise.
Oh, Facebook chat. We should probably.
How could you close that?
I did, but I think it's opened up again by itself. But keep going; they'll stop.
Okay. A few years ago, I was asked by Spirit to create an insignia and a flag for the new earth. They said, in order to free the earth, we must capture it. And what it means by capture it is capture it away from those who have captured it already. And those who claim ownership over our earth, who are false owners, and they are not the real owners of our earth. The children are the true owners of our earth. And they say the earth can't be owned, that's what they want us to believe. I didn't believe it. So it's the children who own the earth. And it will be their world that shall be taken from the darkness and returned to the children. And this is we are at that access and that crossroads now to decide which way do we go, which is truly the fourth, the Oforde, which is the fork in the road that we wake up to every day. We must choose, do we walk down the path of hatred and resentment again and come back to the 3D, or do we want to continue walking the path of light and love and acceptance in the world, which again, we drop our trauma. No more shadows, no more trauma, no more resentment for what occurred to us as children. Because no children on the earth should ever bear the blame of what occurred to us as children, even though the adult world blamed us. That is their trauma, and that was put onto them, and they're carrying on that heirloom trauma. So we again, I don't like the term teacher even, but so the message is that we need to reactivate the inner child and stop taking ourselves so serious either, because the moment we take ourselves too serious, the adult becomes the ruler of our consciousness, and we traumatize our child within. So I like to speak with a sense of humour and tell a lot of stories. I'd rather leave a group of people smiling and laughing than growling in resentment. And so also we communicate to our past self, which is the child that's been traumatized, and let ourselves know that we are not to wear the blame for what occurred, and to not let anyone blame us for what was to occur, and also to understand or to comprehend, is that word again, to comprehend that them adults who caused us such trauma and misery really didn't know what they were doing, and they were merely mimicking the trauma inherited by them. And not to truly blame them for it, but to realize that they were once innocent children too, who were messed with on any level. And suffering can come in all forms. I've met people who lived a privileged life, who have their own suffering because they haven't lived enough to have understandings that those who have lived have, comprehensions. And so trauma comes in all forms, and again, the earth could use a lot less of it. So we're going to be at the doorway. The doorway to our new creation is already open and are waiting to receive us. But they want us to all walk through that doorway together. And that includes our mother as a conscious being. And we, one earth, one heart, will pass through that doorway together. No one shall be left behind. But in the meantime, we have a lot of work to do. And that work, again, certain people on the earth who have been given jobs and roles, and well, their contract. People need to find out what their contract is. And when I was told of my contract, I argued the point, because I didn't want a job that come with so much judgment, and worldwide judgment. But then I was reminded why the contract was so important, and that the spirit of our earth and the spirit of our children are far more important to my wants. So I had to realize that my life was no longer mine, but my life belongs to the earth. My spirit belongs to everything on the earth, every tree, every person, every fish, and every insect. And that, you know, I wished so much when I was younger that I could be just like everyone else and go about my business, being a human. But Spirit had it otherwise, and the spirits of our creation reminded me of my contract in a very heavy sense. And so people need to know now that things are going to be okay. Once you have these realizations within yourself, you'll see that there's a bigger picture at play, and it involves all of us to do this together. And I don't want to be called a leader, because again, that's a want. And what is a leader? It took me a long time to understand what love was. Specifically when I saw so many people saying it, but their actions suggested otherwise. So I grew up watching people say they love each other, but their actions spoke differently. So that confused me. Well, what is love then? Why are people saying it so much, yet not acting it out? So it took me a good part of 2 decades to come to realize what love is and why it is. And it's just holistic acceptance of each other's values and roles on the earth. That's the closest description of love I could find. Loyalty in the heart to each other. Composure of each other's values with each other. And without any attachments, without any wants, and not seeking any kind of reciprocation from it as well.
Wise words.
How are we doing for time?
This is so wonderful, Uluki. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you so much. Just reading all the comments, and also everyone who has been so generous and send you a donation to support your work. And I know that you do not ever charge for what you share. So I just want to emphasize that. So the generosity of everyone is just incredible. We are so grateful to have a guide like you who is here on this planet to truly assist the world, assist Mother Earth, and assist also humanity, and be in service to Divine Mother and Divine Father. So we are so grateful.
Well, one of the tools of our conscious empowerment is, and I've had this conversation a few times, and sometimes it doesn't disappoint me that I have to say it or depress me. People need to cut lies out of their life. Any kind of lie, whether it's, well, if you lie to someone else, you actually lie to you. And if we lie to ourselves, we lie to everyone else. And to make every conscious thought come across the tongue in a truthful manner is a tough job. And it costs us. It can cost us friends standing in the community. It can cost us our loved ones. It can cost us our children and our parents. And that's a tough job and a tough ask. But when we speak with that so much conscious truth, then that will open up our heart and empower us. And as much as we will miss and love each other, sometimes people's journeys aren't together. It's always, you have vibrational families who will gravitate towards each other. No one is truly alone. And sometimes loyalty makes us family, not blood. Sometimes blood just makes us relative to each other. And but if you say actually speaking great truth and watching that vocabulary, like we said before, them words that I still have to watch, understand. We should not understand anything, because that would place us beneath ourselves. We need to rise above ourselves. So we have comprehensions, and to help us, and through that such valued truth and comprehension, our contracts will be told to us and given to us by our guides and guardians. Because one of the secrets of our creation too is that all the humans of the earth, no matter where they think they come from, actually have the blood of angels running through their veins. And how could we not? We have our skeletal structure that was inheritance of our mother in the first days of our creation, and our Father, being the great creator, God, the husband of the wife, which is our mother. Because we got our skeletal structure from our mother and flesh and blood from our Father. And so therefore, in us is the blood of angels. It's another secret that the churches and everyone else has been trying to teach out of us. So, because we are everyone is a descendant. There's no other way around it. No matter how many people are told that they come from there or there or there or there, the fact is that when you're born onto the earth, you're born into the human vessel which carries the blood of our Creator.
Another question here, just reading the chat. Are you allowed to share the new earth insignia symbol that you mentioned with us?
Yes. I'll get a clean one of that.
Clean one.
Okay, we'll see if we can put it up to the camera there. It's a very small version, and I'm just waiting to have someone actually print it up for me properly. Let's see if we can get it up to that camera. Where are we?
Going. And it's the yellow one, right?
The yellow one in the center.
That's super beautiful, Uluki. We can see it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, can you talk us through it? It's got
Yes.
got stars, cosmos.
Well, firstly, with the new Earth flag, it was when Spirit asked me to be the 3D or physical manifester of such a symbol. Spirit also told me to study the flags of the earth, so I knew what I was looking for and looking at. And I come across two flags that stood out from the rest of the world. And one was the Holy See, which is the Vatican flag, and another flag was the Swiss flag, Switzerland's flag. They were of a different dimension to all the other earth flags. And to me, that showed me that there was symbology attached to those two flags. So when I studied the ratios of those flags, most of the world's flags are what they call 5:3 ratio or 4:3 ratio, meaning 4 parts long, 3 parts high, or 5 parts long, 3 parts high. Where the Vatican flag and the Holy See of the Vatican and the Swiss flag were square. And that ratio is called 1:1 ratio. And that's an important number, 1.1.
Yeah.
And the Spirit had and this flag is entwined secretly, without my doing or knowledge, with it's got the golden ratio applied to it on a quantum level, meaning the golden ratio inverting in on itself for the own quantum reality. So I used that flag and I served notice to certain entities around the world in the previous 5 years. And one of those entities was the Catholic Church, another one was the Crown and the Queen and the House of Lords and the United Nations, to serve them notice. And more recently, the Vatican has plagiarized that flag now and used that background color as half of their Holy See, which they never had before, because when I first studied the flags of the earth, the Vatican flag was a shield with 3 keys attached to a shield, with a Templar at the top, which is the guys who went on the Holy Crusades holding a sword upwards. So that flag there, the new flag, is designed firstly with purple at the top, which is a signal to the earth that you're all royalty. Every man a king and every woman a queen. Every child a king and queen of their own kingdom of creation. And that's why purple's at the top, and that's why purple and gold are not to be used by any humans to sign with, only blue and black. The blue is the colour for commoners to sign as chattel or slaves. So when I sign certain documents to help bring an end to a New World Order event starting in 2016, I signed as blue and gold. Blue for the people and gold as a king. And that New World Order event actually had to be scrapped because I signed a contract with the elite and the darkness of the world, and they couldn't cope with having to deal with me. So it's encoded with the Fibonacci code, the golden ratio. At the top is the Godhead. The 7 dark circles are the 7 creation spirits. The sun is in the middle, vibrating gold outwards, and that's why it's gold, because the sun comes through and made it from gold. And the Southern Cross, which is the Southern Crux, which is what the Church's cross is actually based on. And in using different rainbow colours, purple, blue, green and red. And at the bottom is 2 black dots, which represent the mother and father. And what I would do, I can actually send Green Tara a digital copy of that to put up on.
Yeah, that'd be great.
As well, so I have that on a computer and on a stick.
Yeah, let's do it definitely and create it. I have a next question for you, Uluki. People are asking, with all the sacred sites we have on planet Earth, how are we to use them correctly and to anchor light or multiply light?
Well, every grain of sand is sacred on the earth. Every blade of grass is sacred. Every tree is sacred. Every heart is sacred. So you truly only need to anchor within your own heart space. And I talk to people, a lot of people talk to me about meditation, and they like to come up into the mountains and meditate. And I say, yes, that's wonderful. But let's go sit in the heart of the city and meditate. Let's bring that energy and frequency into the heart of the city where there's buses and cars and people and suits and suitcases. Let's sit there and meditate. Because again, even every city, the ground beneath that city was sacred too. And it still is sacred, no matter what sits on top. But there are key energy points. But again, everything truly lies within. To come in and meditate within your own heart space, and also to use your intuition. And your intuition would never lead you astray. Only the mind will lead you astray. But your intuition comes from a deeper place in our spirit and our physical body. And coming into your heart space more, your intuition becomes supercharged and turbocharged. So again, that knowledge will be found within you. So all over these beautiful sacred places, pardon me, and again, just to, and I know some places there's actually keepers of those areas, different native peoples or different, even organisations today. So just to walk in peace and not to go into sacred areas with a want, but rather just with knowing that we're firstly blessed just to be here on the earth. Blessed to have such a wonderful earth to live on. And like I said, everything is sacred. And some people here talk to me about the rock being sacred and this side being sacred and that being sacred. And I said, yes. And that's okay. But then what they do by acknowledging certain sacred points, they ignore the rest of the sacredness of our mother. So the earth is sacred as a whole. We live on the most sacred site is our mother as a whole. Every drop of water, everything. And knowing that, then we know that the world is getting smaller and smaller and smaller as our consciousness expands. And that's part of the creation is to not feel. And the reason why, as we expand, the world gets smaller is to teach us that what needs to occur isn't that big of a job. And people say the government's too big, the system's too big. And I say, no, it's not. The idea is big, that is too big. And that's just an idea, it's not actually a fact. I want people to prove to me that the system is too big. It's not, because I've had personal interaction on levels that prove to me the system is not too big, and the system is actually in fear of us understanding that it's not too big, comprehending it's not too big. I hope that answered the question in a way.
Yes, it's great. And it's also a great reminder that it is us, the human beings, who created the systems. So it could be us in charge of creating new systems if we need systems. But
yes.
putting Mother Earth first. There was another question about dark energy coming from the inside of Mother Earth. And our team, Green Tara, we do a lot of meditations every day. And we just have an experience where we were taken into the earth and were asked to transmute energy within the earth. Can you speak about that and why that would be, where this dark energy would be coming from?
It's part of the purge that's occurring. As of September last year, or previous to September, in around July, the human consciousness has three parts to it. The Trinity, which is us, 3D conscious, which is our coherence with the 3D world around us, our sight, vision. And I can fix that. I've got an inverter and a battery that we can plug it in. If you've got it recorded.
Yeah, I do.
Okay. And as our mother began singing her song, that was, well, firstly, the three-part consciousness. And then angelic body actually entered into the subconscious of all humans to start purging a parasite that is attached to the sub-frequencies of us. And so as that parasite become cleansed out of our subconscious, that also allowed our mother to start singing her song, which was part of it, purging out the darkness that had penetrated deep within the molecular structure of our mother. And the light is coming from the core outwards, not from up there inwards. So the light will be emitting out of the core of our earth. Yeah, so the darkness, again, because inside the earth is light, it's not shadow and dark. There's light in there, just that the shadow and darkness becomes consciously as a conscious attack on our mother.
That's a great answer. And is there anything we can do? Like, let's say our group, we work a lot with violet fire frequencies and we do transmutations of energies. Is it something that you're familiar with, and is that effective?
Yes, well, all frequencies can be cancelled or transmutated. But saying so can love. So we must be aware that we're transmuting on a much higher level. Yeah, no, again, it's just about the conscious human constantly transmuting energies around them, transmuting. Some people can do it on a much higher level with going into our earth and in a certain location where darkness is reigning, and help transmute those energies and frequencies. And also we need to be doing it with each other. Those who you can tell have got a dark force attached to help bring them into the light, but without judgment or without conflict. If we can do it that way and just have people understand that, or comprehend again, for people to comprehend that. I think the greatest transmuting of dark frequencies need to happen with each other. And some on a higher level within the earth and in the ether around us as well.
Yeah, that's right, Uluki. I think that, you know, humanity is about to learn how to use life force, something that we really didn't master in the past, and that created the darkness really between us, from us. I do have a question. You mentioned to me that we need to also prepare our bodies to be more purified for this new energy that is here now. What would you recommend on a very physical level when it comes to purification and refining our senses?
Good water, good pure water. That's program of love. Water, I love you, water.
This is all pure. The spring water. Is that
no, probably not. But we'll transmute it. Water is programmable. So we need to, one day we will have our pure world back and there won't be any fluoride and harsh chemicals in the water or the airwaves. But it's not just going to happen on its own. We have to, or we need to become the authors of the new world. And writing it with our consciousness and heart, not on paper and pen. So again, just our diet and consciousness, love, really good water. And you can also program water with colours. So you get a nice glass bottle and you get the same water source, 7 different bottles, and you can put one for red, one for orange, yellow, green.
Yeah. You can Reiki water as well.
Well.
And you can also put crystals in the water as well.
And then again, just to program it to do what you want it to do, to assist you in your purification.
What about meat?
Well, meat, it's a funny one, meat. And because we're going to be coming into an era, returning to a time where communications with the animals are returning. And you would have to be quite a savage to eat something after you just finish communicating with it.
Yeah.
Okay? Even though there's the different processes around the world where, like for instance, here in this country, the tribes ate a lot of meat, as well as a lot of plants, and yams and berries and fruits, and meat when it was required. But when meat was hunted, there was always a ceremony to thank the animal for providing sustenance, and thank the mother for providing the animal that provides us sustenance. But then what the old tribes, a lot of them would do, and it wasn't always the case, because a lot of the tribes, the further they moved away from the southeast, the more they lost the original creation and the original values of the meat sacrifice on the earth. And so what we were taught was, when we hunted kangaroo, firstly that they would cut out the genitals of the animal and dig them into the ground where they were hunted, so that the life force returns to the earth to go out and to be born again. So there's different ceremonial practices, but we're coming into a time where people say to me, why don't you go out and hunt and provide for your family? There's not much to hunt out there. We need all the life force that we can gather on the earth. Not far from here, just on the other side of them small mountains, really. Pardon me. I could always bring my car the rest of the day because there's no battery in the car.
Yeah, I just want to see how many more minutes our
I would
laptop battery's running out. We're on 10%.
I think we'll be wrapping up soon. Just so that, you know, we've been online for more than 90 minutes. But
Yeah, we've been on an hour and a half.
many people ask about the black pearl. What is it? Where is it? What's the purpose of it?
Okay, well,
We've got 14 minutes remaining.
14 minutes. Wow, that's very numerical. It's my birth date. I was born on Bastille's Day. But the black pearl, when I was a child, when things were not too happy or safe on the exterior of the 3D world around us. So I grew up in a very rugged, primal bloodline that seemed to think that violence was the answer for all things. But alcohol and addiction had become attached to a lot of the tribes of the earth. And that's all tribes, white and black. It's addiction's not racist. So as a child, I was very inept at my own inner journey, and I would travel within myself. And in myself, in the space inside, was a beautiful, clear sphere that was a little bit like smoky quartz, but a bit clearer. And at the heart of that sphere was a little red amber, like a little coal sitting there. And that's where I found the most safest, loving place on earth, was by this item that was within me. And the world had conditioned me out of my own inner journey by the age of 10 or 11, purely because I had to protect my younger brothers, and a lot of times from predators that were brought in by addicted family members. And this is the kind of trauma that children should not have to live through. And this is why the change needs to occur on our earth. So when I traveled in, I knew that was a place of love and warmth and protection. And about the age of 11, I forgot all about it. Fast forward 30 years, 2012 solar eclipse, when this item had reactivated within my own spirit, and the pearl itself had called me in, and I'd come within myself into the universe within, which I hadn't been able to do for 30 years. And so when I arrived within myself and I noticed the pearl sitting there, and the little red amber was no longer a red amber, but the light had struck and was bright white now. And I said to myself, into this pearl, I said, I remember you. And then my ego became attached. And my ego said, if that's inside me, then I must own it. And I must have power and control over it. And so I turned up the light inside the pearl. And the light wasn't ambient, it was structured geometric patterns within this pearl, and they come outside the edges of the pearl. And, and shortly after I turned it up, a black dark cloak had come around this pearl within me. And before I realized, I was invaded by the 7 spirits of creation who cloaked it and told me it was too soon to do this, and that now I had exposed it to the world of darkness, and they had to bring my journey forward onto the earth faster. And in that moment forward, they took me to 3 different places: purgatory, new earth, and a space outside of all time and consciousness. But the pearl itself is a light source. That when what the spirit of creation said, that it's not yours, they told me. I said it belongs to every creature of the earth to receive the consciousness of light, especially after coming out of millennia of darkness in our earth. And I am merely a vehicle and a carrier, that's all.
Just reading the chat that says, love how the birds reacted to Uluki's words. And it was so true. The birds you had, that's what made me look over there. You had a whole heap of...
Were they?
Yeah, what are the green ones called? I always forget. The green and red
lorikeets.
ones. Yeah, the lorikeets. They
Yeah.
just... It was amazing.
But they're attached to the rainbow creation.
Oh, really? Because there was about 10 of them that just flew past and created such a racket. There you go. They're doing it again.
What I want to see now is some people flying past. And
They're
and
doing it
the
again.
they're the new birds of our earth too. And, because on our earth, it's a light source, firstly, a source of power and light. And people don't even have to be told that it's inside me. All they need to know to access that power and light is to reintegrate or re-dignify their life through no lying to themselves and no lying to others. And when they empower themselves through their heart, that heart becomes a direct source of energy to the pearl, and they can absorb that power and empower themselves through that process. And it's free for everybody. And this is why I struggled with the idea of money for so long, because these things are not to be sold. They can't be sold. Knowledge is not for sale. It's to be freely given to the earth in exchange for what the earth freely gives back. And then it becomes a transference of energy, frequencies, not incremented wants and expectations. Because expectations, if I had expectations of you, the world, then that would be me imposing my wants onto the earth, instead of just humbly accepting what the earth will give in return for the sharing and the keeping of such sustenance. So firstly, thank you everybody. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being. Thank you for everything.